Welcome to Indian Music Traditions and Pedagogy for the Global Classroom. I'm Colin Hart, and I'll be discussing my Fulbright final project with you. Uh, I'm a public school music teacher at a high school in the Bronx in New York City, where I lead a world music curriculum, and we have recording studio, piano, and a world percussion ensemble. And so we look at different musics from around the world. I also teach for CUNY in New York, or Lehman College and Queens College, where I teach ethnomusicology courses. So the presentation today is really looking at ways in which Indian music can be taught to Western students or foreign students, students that did not grow up with this sort of cultural background in Indian music. And thinking about how to present that in the classroom. And in addition to that, because I'm a music educator, I'm also a professional musician and an ethnomusicologist, there's some discussions of research I did as well that augmented my project, some workshops that I led and participated in, and some other useful things to keep in mind when researching this music and pedagogy. Now, I chose to particularly focus on Carnatic music, which is from the south of India. So it has its own systems and is related to but different from Hindustani music in the north. So we'll be looking at ways in which this music is notated, communicated, learned, performed, and best practices for presenting this in the classroom, which I plan to do in the fall with my own students. If you have any questions about this, this will be available as a PDF as well for any teachers interested in this. And it's also, you can email me here at my email address if you have any questions or follow-ups. Okay? So I chose the Broadvani Center. I had known several musicians who had gone through the Broadvani Center, particularly because of its focus and ability to teach Western students Carnatic music. And this is because the head and founder of the center is Dr. Karakudi Subramanian, or KSS, who's a professional veena player, a music educator, and an ethnomusicologist who got his PhD at Wesleyan University. And so his focus was really looking at ways to teach the basics of Carnatic music to Western students so that they can absorb it and understand it, and understanding that they might not have that much familiarity with the musical system of Carnatic music itself. So, and this is located right in Chennai, which is sort of the beating heart of Carnatic music and Bollywood film soundtracks and shootings and etc. So it's there's a lot of music going on here throughout the year. So KSS is, we call them, came up with COMET, which is Correlated Objective Music Education and Training. And this is a system, a pedagogical system that he came up with and has published several articles on and was involved with his PhD research as well. And so it's a pedagogical model for teaching Western students Carnatic music, introducing them to the basics of Carnatic music, the sort of building blocks. It is a departure from the older guru model of learning in which the student would live with the teacher for years and absorb the music due to time constraints and sort of modern living, employment, society, etc. This becomes increasingly more difficult. And so, teachers in general of Indian music are looking at this and how to solve this, whether it's, in music conservatory type schools where there's group classes or even face-to-face. What's the best way to teach this music when people have other demands on their time and can't really devote the same level of time commitment that a guru model would require. And so the COMET system also uses technology, so recordings of the pieces, the rhythms, and there's a notation system as well, so that students can follow along and practice on their own once the lessons are completed. So it's very useful to come back to and practice, and you have the sort of oral component to it, the visual component, to sort of correct yourself and work So I found it quite engaging and useful. And the idea here is to then take these concepts or melodic patterns or compositions or rhythmic systems and start applying them to your own instrument. And so the beauty of that is to take this music and push your own musicianship and and start applying these ideas onto different instruments. They don't necessarily have to be music instruments that are used in Carnatic music. For example, I was applying it to different percussion instruments, the sort of rhythmic compositions, as well as playing the melodies on the piano. Now, these have limitations, obviously, but it's useful in terms of thinking and sort of reconceptualizing what's possible for the instruments you play. So it's quite useful. And if you're looking to bring this to a Western classroom, again, it's nice to have experiment with and think about how to apply these musical concepts to your own instruments back in the classroom. So I did 2 sets of music lessons. I did about 6 weeks here with KSS, that's him here on the Veena, which is sort of South Indian stringed instrument, beautiful instrument, melody instrument. And then here's myself on piano, and he would play a phrase, I'd play it back, he'd sing it, I'd sing it back. So there's a lot of call and response and working different rhythmic patterns through scales and thinking about ragas, and eventually learning a composition of Varnam that he taught, as well as looking at the rhythmic structure of it. So it was very useful to have one-on-one lessons, and like I said, there was the computer aspect for when you go home and practice to really be able to hear it and see it. Really helped with mastering it. In addition to that, towards the sort of latter half of my 3-month stay in India, I worked with Manakol Balaji, who was a wonderful Mridangam player here in Chennai, and he sort of built upon what I had learned from KSS. One of the things I was really interested in is Kanakol, which are sort of the rhythmic syllables that they use to express rhythmic compositions. Rhythmic compositions are known as solkatu, and they have different phrases that they use and manipulate to create some wonderful rhythmic compositions that you can then apply once you've memorized them to any instrument. And I was experimenting with percussion and piano, but it was quite challenging, and so I'll go through some of that. This is an introductory way for anybody who's interested, but also for potential teachers who could take some of these ideas as building blocks for introducing students to South Indian Carnatic music, to solkatu, to kanakol. They're very useful for learning rhythms, and they're user-friendly. So we can take a look at that as well. So kanakol, as you can see here, there's sort of Western notation for rhythms. And these rhythms, or really rhythmic phrases, are quite malleable in terms of one beat could be ta, 2 could be taka, 3 is takita, 4 takadimi, 5 could be takatakita, 6 takatakadimi, or even takadatakata, but really is normally takatakadimi with a small number of 2, and then 4, so takatakadimi. Here we have takadimi takata, or also you'll typically see this flipped where it's takita takadimi, so 3 and then 4. Here we have 8, takadimi takajuno. 9, we have 4, 2, 3, or 4, 5, takadimi takatakita. 10, there's different ways to break this up, but one is takadimi takatakajuno, so 4, 6, right, or 4, 2, and 4. Technically, you could do tadikinadam or takatakata, takatakata, but this 4, 6 is more common. And 11, we have takatakadimi, takatakita. So, thinking about, and you can flip that as well, where it'd be the 5 of takatakita into takatakadimi. But you can also, you don't have to stick to these rhythms. Like takadimi doesn't have to be 4/16 notes. You could also stretch it over a period of time as quarters, just ta, ka, di, me, or taka di mi, taka di mi, taka di mi, or taka di mi, taka di mi, taka di mi, taka. So you can change the speeds in which these are used, but the phrase is of four. Um, so it's useful for, as you can see here, combining them to create more complex rhythms. These are sort of the building blocks for expressing rhythms. So it's a nice way to sort of, have students kind of say them and then start putting phrases together and saying them and seeing what rhythms come out. Um, it would be a nice introductory exercise to kind of get their mouths used to saying these phrases, to articulating them accurately in time, and then to start composing or creating their own rhythms, and then trying them out once they've kind of gotten used to saying them, having them do them, play them on their instruments. If you're doing a thing of 4/4, you can pick either a quarter note or eighth notes or triplets or 16th notes, what have you, even more complex stuff, and make sure as long as it adds up to the correct amount in a measure or two, um, the students can manipulate these different phrases to create wonderful rhythms. So once, that's a class or two, but then, of course, then there's kind of, if you're looking to go further, there's all the variations, permutations of these different phrases. So patterns of three of takita. If you see three X's, that means each one gets a beat, and if there's an O, there's a silence. So takita, tadim, dim, ta. And one of these ways that, if the students are kind of just going dim, ta, and skipping that silence there, you can say di, im, ta. So they feel it, and then they can start saying im, which is supposed to be silent, much quieter, di, ta. So it's just felt. And feeling those silences is really important to properly articulate and execute the rhythm patterns as they become more complex. So this one, for example, is tam. You could do ta or ta. This one here is great because it's all silences, but in there they can say very quietly to themselves or just in their head, so that they're feeling those silences as if they're played, but they're not actually articulating them verbally or on an instrument. So you can go through these with the students, which is great, and see who can execute all of them in a row and start using them again as building blocks for creating rhythms. Same thing can be said for patterns of four. Takadimi, tam, tam, right? So you can do that with the students and then just get tam, tam, tadim, ta, ta, right? And get to the point where you can just go ta, ta, or takadim, tam, taka, taka, tam. These are great. They're, really fun to kind of get used to and then combine them. So again, same concept. This could be another class. Same concept here with takatakita. And this gets a bit more complicated, for Western musicians, generally speaking, working with odd patterns, particularly 5, 7, 9, is not as common. So getting students comfortable with this would be a bit of a challenge and thinking about it, but it really stretches you as a musician, which is wonderful, and sort of opens up a whole different rhythmic vocabulary. So, thinking about fives and, counting up how many beats that would be based on, what sort of subdivision you're thinking about becomes really fun, and executing these. And, these rhythmic syllables aren't assigned a certain drum sound. So they're rhythmic compositions. So how students execute that on an instrument, let's say drums, for example, isn't set. So this could be a bass drum, boom, boom, boom. You can articulate these and map them on the instruments in ways to get creative. So you can keep alternating the different drums or the different drum sounds, even if you're just working with one drum, or if you're working on the piano, what notes to play for this. It could be just 2 notes, one for ta, one for ka, or 3, takita, etc. Or run that through a scale, taka, takita, taka, takita, taka, just keep going with that. So these are fun to kind of explore as well, and can be the germs for sort of bigger compositions as you go. Obviously, 6 is just a variation on 3, so you can use those same things and just double it. Here we have takita takadimi. In Indian music, this is the most common to have the smaller number first and the larger number second, so 3, 4. You have the variations here that you can go through as you need to. And it's good just to loop these too as well so that the students get comfortable just saying them over and over and over again and internalize them. 9, another one again, obviously, if you just double taka or takadimi, for 8, you can look at those phrases and use that again. 9 again, 4, and then 5, takadimi, takatakita. I'm used to thinking of 9 more in 3-3-3, takita, takita, takita. But this version breaks it up in sort of an uneven way of takadimi, takatakita, takadimi, takatakita, which is really wonderful in its own right. So again, explore these with the students and see how they take to it. Some people pick this up right away. Some people struggle with it. Sometimes it's understanding how to shape these phrases. Sometimes it's the math involved. Sometimes it's the vocalizing these can be difficult. And it's its own musical system. But I think as you get into it more and more, people enjoy the variety that it brings. So once you've gotten used to takadimi, taka, takita, then it's thinking about running these phrases through, in this case, the tala, which we'll get into in a second, which is really the rhythmic cycle, is in 3 here. So thinking about taking measures of time and then running these phrases. So where you would have right here, ta, ki, da, da, 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 ki, da, da. So I was trying to move the mouse there in time, but as I'm reciting it, but you can hear that what happens is that this phrase of ta, ki, ta is then shortened to ta, ki, ta, da, ki, ta, and then it's shifted like just what we would think of, if we're thinking 16th notes, 4 groups, counting in 3 here, so 1, 2, and 3, and it's shifted to the second 16th note, so then it gets displaced by 1, then it's displaced again here, and then it's displaced again, so that it really teaches you some strong rhythmic mastery if you can articulate that while clapping or just reciting it to the point. It kind of frees you up rhythmically. So this is a good beginner exercise to start with and to practice. Rhythmic displacement is a big thing in Indian music, and shifting a phrase, but just by a 16th note or an 8th note, it can be challenging at first, but really produces some interesting rhythmic phrases. So I mentioned the tala. For the sake of some of these things, that was in 3, but the Adi tala, which is sort of a common 8-beat cycle, is kept with the hand. So as you're reciting this stuff, your hands are actually playing, you're keeping time. And it's typically a clap, pinky, ring, middle, clap, wave, clap, wave. And so I kind of have it here, as you can see, clap, pinky, ring, middle, clap, wave, clap, wave. And here's my teacher, Mr. Balaji, demonstrating this as he's actually running a composition on 5, Tadiginadom, and then you'll hear the different speeds at which he's doing this. But watch his hands here to see how he's keeping time.
1, Tadiginata, Di, Gi, Na, Dum, Ta, 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 Di, Gi, Na, Dum.
So that's kind of the process. You can hear the vocal component to it, and also the hands keeping time. So really there's a lot going on there without even being on an instrument. And then of course taking these and playing them on an instrument is yet another step to develop. So we'll look at the staccato composition. The piece I really worked with with KSS was a Varnam, which is sort of a South Indian Carnatic song that has lyrics. It's a melody based off of a raga. There's also a rhythmic composition that goes along with it. And so I worked on that in terms of the conical, the syllables, and the staccato, the overall composition, but also learning to play the melody on the piano. Svaris are what we think of as music intervals, and where we might use do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, they use sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. And they actually improvise using these syllables as well. So those are listed. And so KSS's sort of online component, you can click on hearing a recitation of just the rhythmic syllables, of hearing the melody played on the vina, having him sing it, and you can change the speed, which is really nice. Gamaka is sort of their ornamentation, which is sort of an integral part of the music. And that can be microtonal at times, so it's a little difficult to imitate that without a pitch bending bar on the keyboard. But you try your best to do so. But even then, it's important to kind of try to play these melodies and then be able to play them at different speeds. So this is the overall composition. There's three parts to this: the Pallavi, Anapallavi, Muktai Sivaram. And you can see here, we were talking about before, re, ga, re, sa. They have the notes here. They have the staccato here, or the conicals. And then these are actually the lyrics underneath. And so we have phrasing that goes on here. And this is the entire composition. Now this composition is played at different speeds. So the first speed is where we have, I said we're in Aditala, 8-beat cycle that repeats. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beats, and he continues 1, 2, right? So you got to be careful here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you can see some of these phrases are going over the bar line, so they're naturally, cutting up the rhythms in different ways so that the phrases cut across them. And so, you would practice this where one beat is ta, dim, taka, dim, taka, dimi, taka, dim, taki, ta, dam, ta, taki, ta, dam, taka, taki, ta, taki, ta, dim, ta, taka, ta, dim, taka, taki, ta, taka, ta, dim, ta, taka, ta, dim, taka, taki, ta. So you would recite this work with the students. You can go as slowly as you need to. It's just important that the spaces are here, because if you double the speed, where this is 1 beat, this is the 2nd beat, 3rd beat, 4th beat, etc., those spaces and structure need to remain the same. Same here, and you're keeping the tala with your hands where you're going beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, of where you're going taki, ta, dam, ta, taki, ta, dam, ta, taka, dimi, taki, ta, dam, ta, taka, dimi, taka, jono, dim, taki, ta, dam, ta, taki, ta, dim, taka, taki, ta, taki, ta, taka, taki, ta, taki, ta, taka, taki, ta. So as I'm doing here, you kind of work in chunks, each one needs to be a class, and then thinking about doing them at different speeds and thinking about instruments and all that. But really the recitation and doing it with the tala in the hands is really important to just nail first, and then you can build upon this. Same thing here again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have taki, ta, dim, taki, ta, dim, taka, taki, ta, taka, ta, dim, taki, ta, dim, So that's the first speed. Second speed is just doubling that same composition, but now we're going twice as fast. So you can see beat 1, beat 2, beat 3 is right there, beat 4, beat 5, okay, beat 6, beat 7, beat 8. So we're doing twice as fast. So we keep the same clapping and go tak-dim, tak-a-dim, 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 tak-ita-dam, tak-ita-dam, taka-takita, takita-dim, taka-ta-dim, taka-takita, takita-dim, taka-ta-dim, taka-takita. So, you have to get your mouth around those syllables and get used to saying them at those speeds, which is really important. And so you'll do the same thing with this composition at double the speed, get the students comfortable with it, and have them being able to recite it at both speeds. And be able to go back and forth is important, and to run through this. So it's really just getting used to those sounds and then working with the speeds on these. This takes a good bit of time. I mean, getting this composition, just this portion down with 2 speeds, could take a month or more. And then thinking about the instruments is, depending on how often you see your students, it's really something that's a lot of fun to work with. And so this is the entire second speed right here, which is great. And so this is something you can, eventually use as a composition where the students recite it together, and then they can perform it on their instruments. So that's the other great thing, is that this alone, just vocalizing it, you can do, and it's his own music, and then of course you can apply it to the instrument as well, which is wonderful. And here's just an example of myself. KSS shot this. I'm just working along, showing what you can do along with the recording, and to kind of see how this works. Yeah, so that's just an example of me practicing along, but it kind of shows you the 2 speeds portion of that composition, and kind of where where you're headed with the students with these. So the other great thing about Chennai here is the live music in the South, and it's important to pick your a place with a lot of live music so you can hear and observe how the music is performed, the setting, certain audience expectations. And you'll see one of the interesting things is that the audience that's familiar with the music keeps the talo with their hands along with the musicians on stage who are not performing. So it's a lot of fun. This is my teacher, obviously, Mr. Balaji, and this is him here on Mirdangam. And this was a live concert that was free to the public. And there's a couple of concerts every night. And it's really wonderful to be able to just go out and listen to great music in a comfortable space and kind of absorb it. So this was a concert I attended, which was a lot of fun. So there's some great live music to be had. So if you're thinking about studying Indian music, Chennai is a wonderful place to do so. Also, the Chennai Government Museum, which has a wonderful music instrument collection, was great to visit. You can learn about a variety of instruments, their origins, ways they change, how they're associated. So that comes highly recommended. If you ever get to Chennai, there's also wonderful art museums, archaeological museums, etc. But the instrument collection was wonderful. In addition to studying music, I'm an ethnomusicologist, so I had read about some of the lesser known southern Indian percussion traditions, and one of them was the Edika drum. And so this wonderful drum, I met with this man who's both a drum maker and a drummer. And this drum is used at certain festivals, Hindu festivals in the year, and it's able to play melodies, which I was really interested in. So this skin is able to produce different pitches consistently where you can play a melody and recognize it, which I found really interesting. So I contacted this maker drummer and actually met up with him in Kerala, which is a state to the west of Tamil Nadu, where Chennai is, and was able to visit both the factories, see the drum being made, bought a drum, and had some musical interactions with him, which was really nice. So this was the factory in Kerala and Thrissur, and you can see the shells of the drums that they're carving. They also do furniture here, but they just had an incredible number of drum shells and then drumsticks of different lengths and woods. You can see there's drum heads in the back here. And so a drum maker like himself would first procure the drum skin, which is actually from the inside of a cow's stomach. So it's very thin, it's translucent. And then he glues that to this wooden rim. He takes the drum shell that's already been mass produced here in the factory. They put strings over it, so it creates a buzzing noise, but also helps to give a little bit greater clarity to the pitch. And then puts this all together. And so what you get is this drum here, and you actually push down on the wood, and it slides on the skin as it's being hit, and you can adjust the pitch based on how hard you push. So let's take a look here and see what this is like. Yeah, so it's really interesting to be able to see that in action. I was particularly interested in this. I play an Irish drum called the bowron, where you can play pitches and kind of follow the melody with your hand on the back skin. And so I was curious for another drum that was able to play melodies in such a way and with such clarity. So we had a little drum interaction here, which you can take a look at the factory. So you can see the percussion discussion that's gone on here, but it was really a lot of fun. And then so I actually shipped this drum back to the U.S. and bring that into the classroom. So I'm really excited to discuss some of this stuff. A lot of the South Indian drumming traditions aren't as well known. I think Hindustani music is a bit more better known in the West, in part because of Ravi Shankar and the Beatles and the sort of groups that came afterwards that were involved with fusion, like Shakti with John McLaughlin, and just I think the curiosity was sparked for Hindustani music, and Carnatic music is a little less known, so it was fun to explore some of these traditions that aren't as well known, and to bring them back to the classroom. So, in addition to doing ethnomusicological research, and I plan to write an article based on that drum and look at it in relation to caste and the Hindu festivals and drum making, and I'll be presenting that at some ethnomusicology conferences as well. I also was excited to observe some classes to see, how the students are, and I was asked by the Fulbright and one of the local music conservatories. They're working together to bring different music workshops to these students, and they asked me if I could do something. So I taught them a sort of a basic rhythmic composition on the different parts of a mambo and the idea of a clave. And so we made do with whatever instruments were there. I think there was a variety of South Indian instruments and some sticks and other stuff. There wasn't a ton there, but we had some fun, and the students were very nice, so I really enjoyed working with them and having this opportunity to provide some enrichment and, for their music education. So here's something we were working on together. So we had some fun. We made the most of whatever we had there. Um, this sort of drumming, I think, was rather they were rather unfamiliar for them. So it was fun to kind of see what we came up with. And this is the group here, and the man who helped organize it. So it was a fun day. This was the other institution, the KM College of Music and Technology. It's the film composer A.R. Rahman, who's huge here in India and really in the world if you're familiar with sort of Bollywood soundtracks. They helped organize that as well, so I scheduled a visit to see the music school, which is a private music school, wonderful. And they teach a variety of Indian music and Western music. So this man teaches violin, this is the head of the School of Music, this man teaches tabla. And so I was able to talk with the faculty about teaching, Carnatic music or Hindustani music in a group setting, away from the guru model, individual lessons, teaching Western music, thinking about notation. And so it was a very productive conversation and a beautiful music school with recording studios, performing spaces, practice rooms, instruments, you name it. It was really wonderful to see. So I enjoyed that a lot and, enjoyed the school visit as well and see some classes and lessons going on. And the tabla player gave a nice demonstration as well. I ended up linking up with the University of Madras's music department to discuss kind of, again, the same concept of teaching Carnatic music in a group setting, at a university setting, to students that may not have a familiarity or at least a musical background or training in some of this music, as well as, discussing Western music and how that's involved in the curriculum. And so they invited me to attend this wonderful Drupad concert and workshop at the university, which was really wonderful to enjoy, and to be invited to be a participant was a great honor. So that was really nice to be able to kind of observe that and to see another master musician and educator kind of lead a workshop was wonderful. And they had also asked me to do a Irish song vocal workshop, one of the types of music that I play professionally in New York and in Ireland. I sing, I play the piano, and I play the baran, and also the bones as well, if you're familiar with those. And so I was able to bring some different songs and discuss some of the intersections. And I had done a number of concerts of Irish music and Indian music where they're blended and finding intersections there. And when I return, I'll be doing that again. Anyone interested, I'd be happy to let you know when that's happening in New York City. There's a sort of shared colonial past. There's an interest in terms of melody, a focus upon it, the use of the drone. So there's some interesting commonalities there that are fun to explore. And so this was a lot of fun to be able to teach a song in Irish, teach a song in English, and then I asked them to bring, a simple song I could learn myself from, one of their traditions as well. So it was a great time and wonderful to connect with the music department here in Chennai. So I hope you enjoyed that. It kind of give you an overview of my work here, my 3 months Fulbright in India. Hopefully it gives you some ideas of what to do to initiate some interest and engagement with students in Carnatic music or Indian music in general. And some basic building blocks. There's a PDF version of this as well that you can use if you want to use it in your own classroom. And of course, you can email me with any questions about any of this. I'm happy to discuss it further, and was really thankful that the Fulbright provided the resources and funding and opportunity to do so, and to really have the time to do so, to study like this. It was really important for my own development as an educator, as a professional musician, and as an ethnomusicologist. Thank you for your time.